Hey guys, so sauerkraut is something I've made before. I have been successful and I have failed miserably. So we are going to try this today and we'll have to let it sit for a few days, see how it turns out. But this is worth working at to get it right, because if you've heard of probiotics and the wonderful things they do in our bodies, I love that we can get that in our food in a way that just happens naturally. And I just call that a vitamin gift straight from God. So we are going to put it together today and I will show you the simple process because it's really not hard. So here's what we're going to do. I have taken my food processor and I have shredded a lot of cabbage. This is probably about a half of a cabbage. I don't know that we'll need all of it because right now I'm just making 1 quart. So what you're going to need is a wide mouth jar and a plastic lid. And then past that, just filtered water. You want to make sure that you're not using water that has chlorine in it. And most tap waters, if you're in a city or in a neighborhood, they are very likely going to have chlorine, and that can be killing the good bacteria that you're trying to ferment and that reaction, that fermenting reaction. So here's what we're going to do. We're first going to take 2 teaspoons of salt. Now I use, in this particular case, this is a Celtic salt that I absolutely love. It's an unrefined salt, and I thought this was sometimes you just gotta laugh, right? So I think it had been cut but not quite open, so you all can laugh with me. We can call that a blooper. So anyway, so we're going to take 2 teaspoons of this and just sprinkle it in. Now you're going to be very glad to know, even though you're not going to eat this, that my hands are clean, because these are my tools. So what you want to do now is massage this, and it's going to actually begin to form some juices. So just begin to massage, and you also want to use a plastic or a glass bowl. Whenever we're making sauerkraut, we do not use any metal products. Now, measuring the salt was no big deal because it didn't really, touch where we're doing the fermented food, but you wouldn't begin to stir this or use any kind of a metal in it. This is sort of a glass and plastic deal, just so you'll know. So actually this process can take a little while, and I also call it exercise for the hands. But this is going to form a little bit of liquid on its own, just as the salt kind of begins to pull out the juices in this cabbage. So I did massage this. It was releasing a lot of juices, but I kind of finished up by just kind of stomping, if you want to call it that. So there are a lot of tools that you can buy online, crocks and weights and all. This is a really simple way, and I definitely would start here and just see what you think about fermenting before you invest in all of that. So now we're going to spoon this into the jar, and just as neatly as I'm able. And you can just pretend with me that you don't see it flying all on the counter left and right. So you are getting to learn this with me. As I've mentioned, I've done it before, but I cannot anywhere near call myself an expert, and we are going to just find out how this works. This will be a couple of weeks getting completely fermented, and here's the deal. Whether it works or not, we're going to let you know. Okay, so there is probably a better way to do that. There's probably some kind of a large funnel. I did not have one, so obviously I could have used a little bit more cabbage in here. So maybe just go ahead and do 1 whole head of cabbage, probably even a large one, because this didn't quite turn out to be enough. But we're going to go ahead and add more brine. But I will show you, you're going to pack this down. And you could see how you could easily take that other half of a head of cabbage. So I hope that you're able to see that there is actually brine that has made itself. With those 2 teaspoons of salt that we put in, there's brine that actually is, to some extent, it's covering the cabbage. Now, since my jar is quite a bit larger than the amount of cabbage that I have in there, and the brine is not totally over the cabbage, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt water, and you just add 2 teaspoons to a cup of water. And I'm going to go ahead and add that. And I'm just going to add the whole thing. So here's what you do from there. Now, in an ideal situation, where I'm an expert, this would be full and it would be beautiful, and the water would come to about 3/4 inch below the top of the jar. So let's just pretend in pretend world that that turned out perfectly, right? Okay, so then you would take your lid. Now you do want to make sure that there's no cabbage above the water, and you really just, you do want to baby this just a little bit. It's something I think you'll get in the habit of doing, and I think you'll find it a joy after you begin to do this, because it's so very beneficial. I think you'll really enjoy starting. But just make sure that all of the cabbage is below that water line. And then we're going to put the lid on, and you're going to tighten it, but then you're going to back off just a little bit. So just about probably not even 1/4 of a turn, tighten it, but then just back it off, maybe a 1/2 inch at the most. But it's going to need to release some air as it begins to ferment. So this is the process from here. So voila, here we are. It's not quite yet sauerkraut, but we are going to check it every couple of days to make sure that the cabbage stays below the line. Now, I know the word mold is not appealing to any of us, but here's the deal. And this has been done for, you know, I want to say centuries and thousands of years, really, people have been fermenting. But if you see something that is just on the top there that doesn't look good, like a piece of this has been out of the water, just dip it out with something plastic, you know, or wooden that's not metal. Just dip it out and throw it away, and you're good. You will know the difference between ferment and spoil, and this is going to ferment. Now, if something spoils and you know it's spoiled, hey, throw it away, we're going to try again. But this is going to take about 2 weeks to be completely fermented the way that we want it. You don't want it much longer than that, because if you wait till longer, it's going to be real mushy. And if you do it before that, you probably definitely have some probiotic activity going on in there, but it's not going to be quite as strong as if you go ahead and give it 2 weeks. But for those of you who this is just not an option for you, this is Bubby's, and this is down to where it's just the juice that was on the sauerkraut, and this is very valuable as well. So they sell this sometimes at health food stores, and they call it gut shot because it still has probiotics in it. And so we will drink this a little at a time, but there's very little, if any, sauerkraut in there, so I really don't have a lot to show you. But most of you have seen sauerkraut before, and the fermented version looks a lot like the other version. It's just a lot more powerful and a lot more healthy and beneficial. So that's that. Hey guys, I hope my little critter here does okay. We're gonna put it not directly in the sun, but I'm gonna leave it on my counter, just kind of out of direct sunlight. And I don't think we can say pray for the sauerkraut. I'm not sure if I'm sure God doesn't mind if I ask for his help, but I hope he does okay. All right, I'll see you next time. We'll see how it does. So the last time we got our cabbage, we measured the salt and the water, we put them together, and then I had them sitting on my counter. Now, the directions I gave you said that it needed to sit for quite some time. I found that to be different, so I'll share my experience with you. With this particular recipe that I did, and maybe it varies depending on how warm your weather is where you are, I started this on a Thursday, and by the next Monday, it was done. So we were out of town a couple of days is actually what happened. And I kind of just put this on auto drive. I wasn't really thinking about it because I thought it was supposed to take longer. I looked over and began to see it. Maybe you can see it here. I want you to be able to kind of see. Kind of looks a little bit like the traditional sauerkraut that you might find in the store. But anyway, I could kind of tell that it had that look. So I just opened it up and tasted it, and it was delicious. It is delicious. There's nothing like homemade sauerkraut in my opinion. Love it, love it, love it. Now it's still sour, so if you don't like sour, it may take a little getting used to, but it's worth it because it is really super good for our health. So there are so many recipes out there, so many different ways that we can do it, but as far as just a basic sauerkraut recipe, give this one a try, but do watch it as it's on your counter, because as I mentioned, it didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. It is extra good. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, that's it for the day. God bless you big. Bye-bye.